Hi there again, it's Tony. So I recently created a burn on a cutting board that I purchased for my girlfriend, and this is it. And I've had quite a few messages of people wanting to know how I did it, what I used, the font, all that good stuff, and centering it and that. So I figured what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another one for my sister Barbara, and I'm going to walk you through this from scratch. So I use Lightburn, by the way, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch you over to the my board, and you'll see the cutting board here. And the first thing I do is I always create a frame for all of my work area. So in this example, you'll see I'm going to do, I don't want to go too far here, so I think 9 inches is pretty good. I know it's upside down, so if you look at it this way, 9 inches gives me a little bit here, a little bit there. That's pretty good. And then same thing here, I'm going to go, I think, like 8 1/4, maybe 8.1. I use inches, you can use millimeters. All you need to do is make sure you leave a little bit of gap at each side here. So it's pretty much almost 8 inches. But anyway, so you know if you do a 9 by 8 square, you will not go outside of that line. If you do more than that, of course, you're going to go over. So what I do is come over to my software, and I create a rectangle just anywhere. Click on rectangle here, just drag and drop your mouse. It doesn't matter where you do it at. And let's unlock it. So up here we're going to unlock it, and the width, we're going to change the width to what I say, 9. And the height we're going to make, let's just do 8.1. So now that we have the exact width and height, let's lock it again. And now we're going to click our select button. And if it's not already on your very first layer, which really doesn't matter, but I like to put it on my first layer, you'll make sure it's selected. You'll come down here to the bottom left, and we'll choose 0, 0. And now it's on that layer. And just as a default, I like to double click on that and click reset the default, and then click OK. So now that gives us a rectangle the size that we want. It puts it back to default. Everything is like fresh, and we know it's 9 wide by 8.1 high. And looking at the board, we have 9 wide. If we go 10, we're going to go outside, and we have 8.1 high. So that's really important. This is the square area that I'm going to be working within. And then on my screen here, you'll see this is the actual box. So anything I do work is going to be inside this box. So let's click the box, and then we're going to go to Arrange, Move Selected Objects to the lower left. So now that it's down here, we're going to come up here and choose Zoom to Frame Selection, and that's going to put us looking right at our box. So I'm going to unselect it. So now any work that you do, you know that you can do with inside this frame, and it will burn specifically just as you want it on here. And I like to do that with all of my projects, because now I know my working area. I'm not going to accidentally go over it or whatever. So I am on layer 0, 0. We've reset it to default, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drag in my SVG that I purchased. It's a bacon logo, and I'm actually going to zoom out a little bit here, and I'm going to drag it and drop it in. And as you'll see, it's large. It's pretty good size, but as you'll also notice, it is still on the very same layer. See the layer that's here? It's still on the same layer as the box, and we do not want that. We want to move it to another layer. So now that it's still selected, I don't click my mouse anywhere, it's still all highlighted. Click on 0, 1, and you'll notice it's now turned blue, and it moved it to a different layer. And before we still click any place else, we're going to want to group this image together, because all of these pieces are actually separate in an SVG. So we still have not clicked anything except the 0, 1. Now we go up to Arrange and click Group. So now this SVG is technically all one piece. So let's click away from it and unselect it. And you'll notice now we have two separate layers, two separate images. If I click on this logo or this SVG, it selects. If I click on the box, it selects, which is what we want. So now let's click on the SVG, and we know that our box is 9 inches wide by 8.1 tall, and this SVG cannot be bigger than that. So our largest point here is 25, which obviously is going to be too big. So we're going to select this, and instead of 9, let's make it, well, let's just make it 9. Let's just say 9 inches and click tab. So as long as it's locked, it's going to change the height of that to keep it in proportion. So as you'll see, it made it smaller. So here's another little trick. So go ahead and click away from it for a second, and we have it here, but we want to put this specifically centered in this box because that's our working area. So what we're going to do is click the SVG first, and then we're going to hold our shift key down on the keyboard and click the box second. It's important that you do it in that order. And then we're going to come up here to arrange, align, and then align centers. And because we did the box second, the first SVG is going to be aligned in the box, which is what we click second. So then let's click away from it, unselect everything, and then we're going to come up here to the box, and we're going to click zoom to frame selection, and there's our design. So the nice thing about this is we know now that we are not going to accidentally, so if you're looking at my camera here, we're not going to accidentally go out because that is going to burn specifically within that image, and that's why I do that square on everything that I do. So now we don't want it like this. We're going to want it fill and line because we're going to want it filled in like this. But the box, of course, we're just going to leave as a line. So you see the SVG, we're going to change this to fill and line. And so we'll change all the powers in a minute, but that's the kind of the look that I'm going for. If you see my camera here, the one that I already burnt, it's exactly the look that I'm going for, and it's going to burn right on the lines that I specified, and it's on its own separate layer. So now we're going to put a name in here, and again we want that name on a separate layer. I like having the different layers. Of course you can burn them all at the same time, but it's so much easier to work with. So what we're going to do is let's zoom out of the picture, and I like to personally not do it on top of this. I'm going to work up here. So let's click on font, and I'm going to click here, and I'm going to type Barbara. And it just does happen to be the font that I want. So I'm going to click select, and as you'll see, again, you notice it's blue, and this is the SVG is blue, and it's on the same layer, and we don't want that layer. We want to be on its own separate layer. So let's make sure it's still highlighted, and let's come down here and click on number 2. So now that we have it on number 2, you notice it disappeared or whatever. That's because it had some other stuff on there previously. One second. Okay, so let's double click on that layer, and let's click reset the default, and then we'll click OK. And you'll notice it comes back up here, and now it's on a separate layer. And for this, we're going to want to fill, so we'll go to fill in line, and there's our font. So let's click away for a minute, and that's our name. Just so happens if you click on it again, it happens to be the correct font that I want. So you can choose, whatever fonts that you want to choose, whatever with it. But this one happened to be the one because I did it previously. So let's just say it is, and let's take it and we'll drag it down on top of this layer. So let's click away from it so we unselect it. Now let's click up here in the frame selection. And now that we're zoomed into exactly, so what I want is, if you notice here, so I'm actually going to do something a little different here. The word Emily is much smaller, so I didn't have to do anything to the name because it fit in there perfectly. The Barbara, I want to change a little bit. I want to actually turn it. So, sorry, I keep getting interrupted. Let's click on the name, and what we're going to do is we're going to come up here and we're going to move our mouse until we see the two arrows, as you can see here. And then we're going to turn it. And I actually don't like where it's at, so I'm going to come into the middle dot here. I'm going to move it up a little bit, but it's it just needs to be bent a little bit. So there's a little dot here. You see this little dot? I don't know if you guys can see it on the screen. I guess you can. If you click that dot and hold it and move up a little bit, you'll notice you'll be able to bend the words a little bit. So only a little bit, and then I'm going to move this down, and then I'm actually going to rotate it a little bit more. Let's see. It actually looks good, except I think it needs to come this way a tad. So if you actually zoom in, it'll move less for you, which is good. That actually looks pretty good right there. So I actually think I want to come down a little bit. So click on it again. I want to zoom in and come down just a smidgen. There we go. That looks pretty good. So what you do is zoom out and then just right click and go to preview, and that'll kind of give you a preview, an idea of what it's going to look like. And now you can kind of see the distance here and here. Even though this actually shows you a simulation burn, I like it because it kind of gives you a really good idea of exactly where it's going to be. Yeah, I actually like that right there. Actually, it looks pretty good. Got a little bit of a bend in it, as you can see, and I'm actually digging that. So now that we have that all done, let's go ahead and click the zoom to selection, and I'm going to turn off the output on the bottom two things, and I only want the frame output, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually line this square up onto my cutting board. So before I do that, just the line is highlighted, or I'm sorry, on for output. Let's double click on it, and I want power of only 1, and I want the speed 110 is good. Actually, let's just do 115. 115 is good, and then click OK. So the speed is, the speed's going to go 115, so it's going to go around the board, and the power is really not going to do nothing because it's just going to show us where it's going to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change you over, and I'm going to just let you watch me how I would normally line this up. So let's change you over, and I'm going to turn the machine on. And I'm going to put this, normally I have a piece of wood here to butt this up against it, but I don't this time because I want to do it freehand and show you exactly how I did the last one. And so this is exactly where I want my cutting board to be. It's straight on the line here, and this way is good. So I'm going to move my laser in, and I'm actually this time going to burn this from the center. I don't normally do that, but this one I am going to. So I'm going to, let me shorten this down here, and if you look at my job origin, I'm going to choose center, and you will see that it is going to go from the center, and see the green dot right here. So I don't normally do this, so there might be a little bit of a mix-up, but you'll be able to see me figure it out. So let's click, well, leave that like that. And now in the software, again, I like to right click on devices, and if you notice right here it says disconnected, then it says ready, then I come up to move, get position should be 0, 0, 0, I'm going to say set origin. So now it knows, I'm going to click here back to zoom to frame selection, it knows my origin now is 0. So if you select this frame, which is what I want to do, what I do is go to Arrange, Move Laser to right side up selection. And if you'll see my laser, it just moved over way too far for whatever reason. And then I click the fire button. So we're going to move it back. I'm not sure why it went that far, but we're going to move it back. And then we're going to turn the fire off, and we're going to say go to origin. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's doing that. Okay, I had to pause it for a second because I messed that up. So what we're going to do is, let's start over. See this box here? We're going to put my laser in the middle here, okay? And here's why I went wrong. If you notice down here, I'm going to zoom in. You'll notice, you see that little plus? The software thinks that the laser is right there. But if you look at if you look over here, I actually put it in the center, and that's why I had my orientation off. So this is a good learning process. So coming back to the software, if you click here, zoom into frame selection, I have the laser in the center, and the software thinks I have it in the left. So the best thing and easiest thing to do is make sure your job origin is in the center. Go up to Arrange, we're going to select this frame. Arrange, move selection to move laser to the selection center. So it's going to move the laser now to the center of this. So right now, the software thinks that my laser head is in the dead center of my cutting area. So I'm going to manually move this back to where I think it's close to center. Doesn't really matter, it's close. And again, you can press fire, and if you look at my laser now, just came on. If you don't have the fire button, go up to Edit, Device Settings, and then right here, Enable Laser Fire button, and that will turn it on. Unfortunately, you'll have to restart the software to make it come on, so you can just save your work. But so now, what we're going to do is, what I originally was going to do was, I'm now going to tell the laser to move to the right, to the left, and then up, and then down, and I'm going to put it exactly where I want it, and when I'm done, then I'm going to run the whole frame at 1%. So for this example, let's go to, now that, make sure that the box is selected. That is important, make sure the box stays selected. Let's go to Arrange, move laser to right side of selection. So if you look, and then we're going to click fire on the laser. So if you look, it's not hitting it. So I'm going to just click this wheel and roll it back a little bit. Right there. That's probably about a good area. So now we see it's in a little bit. Whoops, in a little bit. I like to pull in the wheel. And then now what I'm going to do is tell the laser to come back to your software, go to Arrange, move laser to left side of selection. If you're going to notice, we're going to come all the way over here. So you notice this much bigger gap here than it was over here. So I'm just going to come a little bit. Let's just say right there. It's fine. And then now I'm going to do the exact same thing again and move it back to the right. And it's just going to be close. Unless you want to measure it out, entirely up to you. So that's pretty close. So now I'm going to tell it to go back to the center. So we're going to go up to Arrange, move laser to center of selection. And now I'm going to go up to Arrange, move laser to top of selection. So that actually looks pretty good. So let's move it to the bottom and see where that puts us. If you notice on the screen here, you see the plus sign, the red plus sign? I'm going to turn it off and on so you can see it. That's where the software thinks the laser is. And technically it is. But that's where we went wrong the first time. So now let's go to Arrange, move laser to bottom of selection. So we're going to come down here, and that almost is perfect, to be honest with you. So let's say, go to Arrange, move laser to center of selection, and then we're going to come to our software and choose Set Origin. So what's important here is now the software knows that this is our user origin. It thinks that's where the laser is. We're looking at it here, and it is exactly where we want it at. So let's turn the fire off, turn the laser off, and let's come back to our cut thing over here, our tab. And we're going to make sure that the other two are off, and the very first output is on, and the power is 1%. That's super, super important. And then we're going to tell this to run, and it's going to literally just run right around this square on the screen here. And then we're going to watch the laser here and make sure it's pretty much where we want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and click go. And if you'll notice now, it is telling me exactly the frame of where my burn area is going to be. And that looks pretty darn good, I have to say. Looks pretty good. Yeah. So let me show you one other thing. You see when it was done and it ended right here? Let me show you something. So if you go to Arrange let's just say move laser to selection center. So now it's in the center of our selection. So let's say when you're done this, you want the laser to move out of the way because you want to be able to look at it, whatever. So on the screen here, if you come up to move, and we're just going to say distance of, I'm just going to say 1 inch, speed's 175 is fine. And then we're going to say move up. Well, you probably could do 2 inches, but move up, move up, move up, move up, and move up. And we'll do one more. And that puts it out of the way. Let's just say this is where I want it to go when I'm done. So back in Lightburn, if you say set finish position, so now when you're done burning or testing, it's going to go right there out of your way every time, which is really, really nice. So let's come back down to go to origin, and we want it to go to the center of our cutting area. And I like to test it one more time, everything. So I'm going to click start again, and we're going to watch the laser on the screen, and then when it's done, it actually should move up out of the way. So if we look, we're really good. I want to just double check here because it almost looked like it was, no, it's pretty good distance right there, and then over. It looks good. That looks really good. Now this should move out of the way. So that's a great feature. So the reason why that's really important, a couple things. I just want to explain something. The reason why that's important is because on all of my stuff that I do, I do everything that I cut and I burn, I make sure that I measure the outline, and then I do all my work within that outline. And that's how I get almost a perfect burn every time. It's worth that extra couple minutes. It's worth the extra time to put it at 1% power and run your frame around it. And no matter what I do inside that, I know I'm not going outside my burning area. And it's just a rule of thumb. Even with your 3018, same exact thing I like to do. I always make sure that sometimes I'll run it around, but not do anything, just to make sure that it's exactly where I want it. So, with that being said, I'm going to switch you back to the table. And if you look at my screen here, I'm going to turn off the output now of the frame, and I'm going to turn on the output of the spoons. And we could turn them both on, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. And then if I right click now in an area, I'm going to go preview, and this is what I'm going to get. If I click on here and I just drag this bar, this is how it's going to burn, just so you know. It's how it's going to burn, and that's perfectly fine with me. So I'm going to double click on this first layer. And the first layer I'm going to, I believe my other one was 65 speed, and the power was 80. Oops, sorry, tab. Power was 80. Now, down here, I like to put my lines per inch, which is technically the DPI. I like to put it at 300. It's just a preference of mine. You can choose whatever you want. So if you keep going down, don't forget to change your line settings also. You're going to want to change the line settings to exactly 65 and 80. Sometimes I like to make it go a little bit slower, but in this case, it actually worked out pretty well. So speed 65, 80. Or speed 65, sorry, power is 80, my DPI is 300, speed again down here, line settings, and then the power is 80, and click OK. And so we're going to do the exact same thing for the fill in line for the names. And so we're going to come here, we're going to go 65, and then we're going to go 80, and then we're going to come down to the DPI, we're going to do 300, and then we're going to come back down lower and do 65 for the speed, and then 80 for the laser, and then we're going to click OK. So, and we want one pass on all of it, and that's pretty much it. Like right now, it's going to pretty much just burn those just like that. Let's right click, preview. That's what we're going to get. Click OK. And also, if you right click and go to preview, it kind of gives you an idea. It's about a 4-hour burn. It's probably not going to take that long, but that just kind of gives you an idea of about roughly. I think the other one, it actually was about, I think, 3 hours. But so in this example, that is exactly it. You would click start, And you can actually click go to origin if you want. The laser head will go in the center, and then you can click start and it will start burning, and that's pretty much it. I hope that helps. A couple of things to take away from this is this frame. I always do a frame around all my software. We messed up a little bit with the orientation because we forgot to tell the laser to go to the center, even though because our job origin, down a little bit, over here we told it to burn from the center, so I forgot to move the laser. So it's good that those things happen, and you can see, you know, the things that I go through also. But and also the layers, don't forget to use your layers, and whenever you create a new layer or something, just double click on it and go to reset the default, just to start over, because you don't know what settings you had before. And that's pretty much it. I hope this helps, and if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Have a good evening.
Jungle.